So for those that are following my channel, I've recommended several different analog joysticks you can put into your control panel here. And one of the most common ones that people ask me about that I recommended is this cheap basic 4-axis joystick that you can get from eBay. And it's really just called a 4-axis basic joystick. And the model number you can see on the box here is an R400B-M4. So this is the box that it's going to come in. Again, this will run you about $15 to $17 shipped on eBay, and it's going to come in a box like this. In the packet contents, you're going to see the actual joystick itself. Then you're going to see a pack of screws to be able to secure it down. And then this is the plastic part that you're going to be able to secure down this rubber part. So those are all the parts that come with the box. So what's so unique about this controller versus other joysticks? So first off, this is an analog joystick, a true analog joystick, and you can tell because it has these potentiometers on the side. And again, it's usually anything that has kind of this round circle with 3 terminals coming out of it, that's a potentiometer or a pot. So that goes over your x-axis and your y-axis, and this gives you a full true analog joystick for when you're using a throttle or a pedal or anything else. Just like your analog StarWars yoke is also an analog signal joystick. So this is the breakdown of the x-axis and the y-axis, and what are all these wires coming out of it? So here there's actually a button on the top, and so one of these is going to be a ground. The blue wires are the ground and the input for the button, and there's also a twist axis. If you move it to the left or to the right, it's actually going to pick up an input signal for going to the left or to the right. So it's actually, you can actually map that to another axis if you had more room on your APAC or whatever you're reading. So it has 3 full axes, your x-axis, your y-axis, and you can do a z-axis rotation with your left and your right. But we can just map it into your APAC as a regular input. So that's kind of breaking down what this is. I'm going to show you how to get this installed into your panel, what you can do to wire it up. So you'll need a couple additional supplies to get this installed into your control panel. So first off, you're going to need some extra encoder wires. So I have some extra sandwall style encoder wires that are going to fit the ends of the terminals on your potentiometers. These are 2.8 millimeter terminals here, or spade connectors that are going to fit. It's a little bit loose here, so all you need to do is just use your pliers and crimp that down, and that should be nice and tight. And so you're going to need 6 different wires. So if you have encoder wires that come in pairs, you just need 3 of them. Make sure they're a little bit longer. I get these from DIY Retro. An extra screwdriver and a drill bit to be able to secure down this plastic part once you're all done. And then to get this secured to the control panel itself, we can't even these screws are a little bit too short to fit all the way through the panel. So we're going to use some double-sided tape to secure this into this hole up here. Alright, to install this into your control panel, I used a 1 1/2 inch hole saw like this to be able to drill through the plexi and the control panel at the same time. You can see this really clean cut here. The 1 1/2 inch hole saw is actually the perfect size for this whole thing to fit through the bottom and then give you enough clearance to put you through the hole. If you use a smaller regular 28 millimeter hole like that you use for some of these other buttons, it's going to be too small and you would have to take this whole thing apart, which you can do. You would just take off this bottom part, literally pull this off, and then you can stick it to the hole and then put it back together. So I do, if you have this, a 1 1/2 inch hole saw, it's going to be the perfect size to be able to drill a hole that's big enough and wide enough for this to fit all the way through. So that's step 1. So now I just took my double-sided tape and then cut them in half, and I'm just going to apply these 4 strips of double-sided tape around the edges of the joystick here. And again, this is going to be secure enough to hold it in place, and it shouldn't move that much. If you do find that it does move, you can always replace it, try to find another way to secure it. For this, this works for me. Again, this is just what I recommend. You can do whatever you want to be able to help secure it down. So once you have that in place, then you're going to unpeel these and then stick it back through your hole and make sure it's secure on the bottom side right in the center. Alright, I just put this through the hole, and then when I'm getting it mounted, I'm going to make sure that my wires are coming down. If this is the top of my board and my control panel, I'm going to have the 2 pots going onto the top and then to the left, and then these wires coming down. So all these should be wired the same way and should look very similar. So this is how I recommend to install it, with these 2 pots on the top and the left, these wires coming down, so that this is going to be able to attach into your APAC. Okay, pay attention to the yoke wiring diagram here as I wire up the potentiometers here. So this is going to be your x-axis, your right-left, and this is going to be your y-axis, your up-down. So this first prong here is going to be your ground. So I'm going to use a red cable for my ground. The middle one is going to be your right, and then the one on the end is going to be your left. Okay, so those are your 3 x-axis wires here. The next one on the side, again, the first one here is going to be your ground. I'm going to keep that red. And then it's going to go up in the middle and then down on the bottom. So this should be pretty standard for all these that you wire up. Again, you can always test it, but I'm pretty sure this is how it's set up. So follow the yoke wiring diagram, and I'm going to show you how to plug it into your APAC along with these wires here. If you've seen any of my other wiring tutorials, you'll know that I like to use ferrule tube crimpers for these ends. And so I just cut off the ends, put on a ferrule tube in it, and crimped it down. And so again, on the top, we're going to start plugging this in right, left. Again, that's the top 2 right here. And then for these black wires, this middle one is going to be up and then down. And this is going to plug into the player 2 side of your APAC. Again, your yoke and all your wires and things for the actual control panel are going to be on your player 1 side. So that's your up, your right, left, up, down right here. So I'm just going to tie this down. So before we plug in the red ground wires, let's talk about the rest of these wires and what they do. So you have 2 blue wires coming out of here, and these 2 blue wires are meant for the button that's on top of the joystick. And then these 3 buttons, or 3 wires here, are for that rotation I was telling you about. So the black one is going to be a ground, and then any of these blue ones, it doesn't matter, is also going to be another ground. So you're going to need to take one blue and the black one along with the 2 red ones here that you have from your x-axis and y-axis. You're going to need to tie all of these together and make sure you get this into one of the ground terminals onto the APAC. So they'll show you a couple different options you can do to get these grounds into this area here. So you have a lot of options to put these ground wires into your APAC. If these were long enough, you can actually just tie these together and then tie them with this last wire here so you can ground it into your APAC. But this one isn't long enough. So what I'm going to do is I've been actually using daisy chain ground wires for these buttons. Instead of having individual wires tied together, they're just hopping and daisy chaining into each button. And I have one last daisy chain lift loop here. So this is an extra ground wire input that I have coming from here. So I'm going to tie these all together and then add in a female or male spade connector and connect it into here. If you're doing a lot of mods, something you might want to invest in is a Perceiva crimping tool set like this for female and spade connectors. So you'll see a lot of the connectors for these encoder wires have this set allows you to make custom length ones for any of these different sizes, kind of the sandwall size or the hap size ones or these larger connectors here. Super useful if you want to make a custom length wire for anything that you have instead of using your default one. So this is about 23 bucks. So I recommend this kit if you can. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this male connector here, put it into the largest section here so that it's tight, and then we're going to take all those wires that we had from our axis joystick, the x-axis, the y-axis, and the 2 buttons, and then we're going to crimp it down. So once it's crimped down, it should be pretty secure, but I always like to start on the highest one and then go to the next level down so that way I can make it sure it's extra secure. So now that I have a male connection here, this is just going to connect to that extra daisy chain ground that I have just like that. If I wanted to, since this is kind of loose, I could, heat shrink this, or I can tie this down, which I'll probably do, zip tie it down. So now all my ground wires from this are tied into this daisy chain that's coming up all the way here, and then into this ground wire down here. And the last thing we need to wire up are these 3 the wires for the buttons and the twisting motion on top. So the blue wire, it doesn't matter which ones you're going to put into. These are actually too small to put ferrule crimping tubes on it, so I'm just going to stick these in and tie it down. So I'm going to have my blue wire go straight into my 2 SW1, and then this is going to go into 2 SW2, and then this is going to go into SW3. So those are just going to go into the top, and then I'm going to get my screwdriver, tie it down. Before you go any further with tying it down and securing it, we do want to test to make sure everything's working. So we're going to plug in our APAC into your PC. So once it's plugged in, go ahead and go to your start menu, type in the word USB. You can see something that says setup USB game controller here. I'm going to try to zoom in so you guys can see it here. you should see two different APACs. We're going to be going into the second one, which is where our 4-axis basic joystick is wired into. So if you open that up and if everything's working, so let's go ahead and zoom back out. You can see that little cursor on the screen. Let's zoom out, and our cursor looks like it's moving, and it's moving appropriately. So we got our up, down, left, right. Perfect. So everything's working perfectly. And now let's check our button. So I'm going to press the top button. Should be number 1. So you see that 1 lighting up. Twisting to the left is the number 2. And twisting to the right is the 3. So everything is working appropriately. The only thing is that since we have the that 1 1/2 inch hole, it's not going to be able to touch the corners because it's actually running in a full corner rotation axis like this. And yours might actually not reach this far all the way to the edges. If you want to, once you're here, you may want to go into the settings section, click on Calibrate, and make sure you calibrate your 4-axis joystick, and go to next, and then you just try to go into 4 round circles. So if I'm here, my joystick here, I'm just going to take this and go in a big giant circle, and try not to twist it when you're doing it. See, it actually registered the input button, so I'm going to have to do that one more time. So settings, calibrate, next, and then carefully go into a round circle without twisting it, which is going to be a little bit hard, so that you can calibrate it, and make sure you try to get it as close to the edges as possible. This is going to give you the greatest range of motion onto your axis, your stick. So now that it's there, I have it and everything is calibrated. So last thing, once you're all done, all you need to do is take your plastic portion here and then put it on top, and then you're just going to use your screwdriver or actually your drill bit, measure these holes, and carefully grab a small screw or drill like this. You're going to slowly drill pilot holes to be able to get these last screws in here to get it nice and clean and flush. And that's it. Once you have that installed, you have a nice 4-axis basic joystick installed here. Again, cheapest cheap analog joystick that you're going to be able to find to have with your StarWars yoke. It's going to work really great with your yoke combination. You can use it as a shifter, you can use it as a throttle. It's going to give you a lot of different options for gameplay. So hopefully that's it, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.